Welcome. Thank you for agreeing to be a panelist for the New Jersey State Council on the Arts FY26 Local Arts Program Application Process. My name is Andrew Binger, and I'm a Program Officer for Community Partnerships here at the New Jersey State Council on the Arts. The New Jersey State Council on the Arts is dedicated to serving the arts sector and views panelists as critical partners in this process. The Council, as stewards of public dollars, strives to maintain high standards of accountability, transparency, and equity in its grant-making processes. We rely on the expertise to help us reach that standard. Your expertise helps us identify strengths and areas of improvement for our partner organizations and even refine the very processes that we implement for this assessment. Your help ensures that our investment reaches its maximum potential to enrich local regions, arts organizations, and the people of the state of New Jersey. Again, we thank you for your time and commitment. This orientation is designed to provide you with a detailed overview of the grant review process and give you all the details on how to navigate our grants management system, SAGE. Technical assistance for this review process is available anytime via email and during 2 virtual office hour sessions, which we'll discuss. Our staff is available to guide you through the process and answer any questions that you may have during this process. Please don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions. We actually welcome and encourage them. And now, a little background on the specific program you will be reviewing. The Local Arts Program was established in 1979 to help expand the impact and reach of state dollars for the arts sector. Commissioners in each of New Jersey's 21 counties designate one entity to be their designated county arts agency, or CAA. These CAAs receive funding directly from the council to enrich arts and culture programming in their respective counties and to re-grant these local dollars. These CAAs receive funding directly from the council to enrich arts and culture in their respective counties and to re-grant to local arts organizations in their county that are already not receiving funds from the council. A majority of these CAAs are extensions of county government, the county's Office of Culture and Heritage. A few of the county's CAAs are part of the county college system, and there are 3 counties whose CAA is a separate, independent nonprofit. While this information should not impact the way in which you assess the ability of the CAA to align with the specific program rubric, it may be important to consider these nuances as you navigate this process. By and large, this LAP review process assesses the CAA's ability to enrich arts and culture in their respective county, how they structure and run their grant program, and the ways in which they serve their re-granted organizations. Over the last few fiscal years, the council has invested over $6 million into the LAP program each year. FY26. This review process will be for the fiscal year 2026. This process operates on a standard calendar year. Here you can see a schedule overview. The guidelines score this review process will be for fiscal year 2026. This process operates on a standard calendar year. Here you can see a schedule overview. The guidelines score, This review process will be for fiscal year 2026. This process operates on a standard calendar year. Here you can see a schedule overview. The guidelines corresponding to this application was released in November 2024. This provided everything our CAA applicants need to know in preparation for the application release. On that same day, the rubric was released, a first for this program. This rubric is identical to the rubric that you will be using to evaluate the applications. This ensures that our CAA partners can begin preparing materials for the application with a keen focus on the evaluation criteria in mind. 2 office hour sessions were offered to provide tips on preparing and answering any questions as it concerns the rubric or the guidelines. The application was officially released in January 2025, with 2 more office hours following that. The application was due in Sage by February 13th, 12 p.m. Right now, we are entering the at-home review process. Where you will asynchronously review each of the 21 applications. As this is an independent component, we advise you to pace yourself appropriately. While only you know your commitments and responsibilities outside of this commitment, we do encourage setting a goal each week to ensure there's no last-minute overload and that you'll be able to give each application a thorough and judicious review. This process will close on April 10th. This process will close on April 10th. We will have our live deliberation on May 6th and 7th. During those days, we'll go through each application with conversations about organizations whose preliminary scores from your at-home review are not in consensus. If there is general alignment in scores based on your independent review process, we can accept these as final scores. If there are major discrepancies in the scores, we will engage in a deliberation process that will help identify what each panelist assessed and reassess if necessary. In June 2025, funding scenarios will be built and reviewed by our Council Grants Committee. And in July 2025, funding will be voted on by the full council and announced at our annual in-person meeting. The role of the panelists in this process. The role of the panelists is extremely important in the council's grant-making process. It is up to the panel's expertise and discernment to fully assess the application's quality and the CAA's competency to manage this process and this funding. To ensure the most informed, objective assessment of the applications, we ask that panelists thoroughly and completely read the available grant guidelines and any support materials that may be offered. The guidelines detail in full what is expected of each applicant, including how to present their budgets. The guidelines and support materials will provide your basis for understanding the application. However, the staff is always available to help answer any clarifying questions you may have about these documents. As you begin your review, you will analyze each of the applications for the quality and clarity of their grant narrative and the soundness of their project budgets. Support materials for each application should complement the full application and uplift the systems in place to ensure a successful and accessible program. As you review each application, you'll be asked to provide a score and comments for each evaluation criteria. The comments should be provided in 2 categories: strengths and challenges. A sample worksheet will be provided to you so that you can work offline before entering your final scores in Sage. We hope you'll provide us with feedback on this process. Your input on the application review and your experience as a panelist will help us shape more meaningful, equitable grant panels in the future. We hope you'll consider providing us feedback at the end of the process. Because the council staff only reviews applications for compliance and completeness, we rely on the panelists to evaluate and assess the CAA's applicants' excellence and readiness via the evaluation criteria. Panelists do not directly recommend funding, but your scores and comments do help our board make funding decisions. The council's grant committee utilizes the panelists' scores and comments to help them craft funding scenarios, which are voted on by the full council in July. Panelist notes and comments are compiled into a consensus comment document that will be shared with the applicants. However, no comment will be attributed to any one panelist, and your identity will remain anonymous throughout the process. Evaluation criteria. Each application is assessed based on the following criteria, which is outlined in detail in the FY26 LAP guidelines and rubric. 1, the quality of the countywide arts and culture planning and the implementation of that planning. 2, the quality of the CAA management and the adequacy of resources dedicated to operating this partnership program. 3, the quality and effectiveness of the LAP regrant program. 4, the quality and reach of the CAA's engagement, programs, and services. 5, the CAA's commitment to this partnership with the council and also with other stakeholders, community development, and arts advocacy. And 6, accessibility and the CAA's ADA compliance. Rating scale. The evaluation criteria for each grant are the most important foundation for your review. In the rubric, you will see a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 representing the highest score and 5 representing no evidence of that criteria. Each criteria in the rubric is accompanied by text that will help you with your scoring. We encourage panelists to please utilize the full rating scale. A score of 1 should only be reserved for those applications that are truly exemplary in their justification of that criteria. Should you have any questions, concerns, or lack of clarity around any items within that criteria, we encourage you to please use a score that reflects those questions or concerns. A score of 2 or 3 is still very good in that instance, but please utilize a score of 1 for those applications that are truly exemplary and need absolutely no improvements. For example, if a CAA proposes a project which provides classes for adults at a local senior living center, but the long-range art plan doesn't include or align with this type of project, or the specifics around funding this are unclear, your score should reflect this lack of clarity. A 4 in this instance might be appropriate. Please note that the scores you utilize for each criteria and your components should be in alignment. The staff reserves the right to address any discrepancies noted in your scoring. For instance, if your notes reflect that the arts learning goals are vague and unclear, but you scored the application a 1, program staff may reach out to clarify this score. Panelist comments. Panelist comments. Later in this process, we will walk you through the application portal, Sage, and the Sage checklist. You will be able to see how to input your scores and comments. You will need to input a score and your challenge or strength comment for all criteria for every application. Your comments should cite specific, noteworthy strengths and challenges of the application. Once your comments and scores are submitted for all applications, council staff will review all panelists' comments and scores and compile a consensus comment document. This document will include statements that reflect shared strengths and challenges from across the panel review. Statements will be framed in a way where it cannot be attributed to any one panelist. A sample statement may include, the panelists were unclear about the CAA's intended use of grant funding, or panelists noted the in-depth, thoughtful, programmatic accommodations for participants. Again, it's essential that the panel commentary align with the final scores of each application. Panelist review. The panelist review period is about 4 weeks. Applications will be made available to you in Sage on or around March 10th with an April 11th due date. And now, statement on biases. The New Jersey State Council on the Arts recognizes that despite our best efforts to create an equitable grant application process, it remains inherently imperfect. As a staff collectively committed to designing improved systems for equity in grant making, we are actively working towards improving the grant panel review process from beginning to end. You, in the role as panelist, are a critical partner in reaching the council's goal by helping us ensure the panel process is as thorough, fair, and equitable as possible. Bias on the individual level may manifest in a variety of ways during panel reviews, both obvious and covert, including the following, but not limited to: racial bias, gender bias, age bias, personal preferences / affinity bias, affiliation bias, confirmation bias, and general assumptions. We find that as people who are engaged deeply in the arts or in nonprofit management, we often have a bias towards wanting all organizations to receive funding, even when the application does not clearly articulate the county arts agency's ability to manage that funding. We ask that you utilize discernment in scoring, utilizing the full rubric scale for all evaluation criteria to ensure that each application is being reviewed on its strengths and challenges rather than our hope that all organizations be funded. Discernment is key, and we value your use of it. We also want to note that as a panelist, if you find yourself leaning into assumptions, assuming an organization meant X instead of Z, or assuming that they do something that they do not explicitly state, this is a form of bias. If you find yourself leaning into assumptions, do your best to ensure that you are scoring an application based only on the direct information that is placed in the application. No additional research is permitted to confirm understanding. If something is unclear, score it as such. Conflict of interest. If at any time you feel yourself unable to make an unbiased evaluation on an application, if you feel you have a perceived or real conflict of interest due to personal or professional affiliations, let us know immediately. You will be asked to abstain from reviewing that application. This will be noted in Sage, and you will be placed in a breakout room during the panel process during that applicant's review. If you have even a small bit of doubt about your potential bias, we urge you to lean into that and recuse yourself from that review. We are always happy to discuss any conflict that concerns you and provide our guidance. Finally, some tips. Keep your comments brief but thoughtful, focusing on two categories: strengths and challenges within that specific evaluative criterion. And now some tips. Keep your comments brief but thoughtful, focusing on two criteria. And now some tips. Keep your comments brief but thoughtful, focusing on two categories: strengths and challenges within that specific evaluative criteria. Think about what was missing or needed additional clarity, or those items that were truly detailed, specific, and exemplary. There is no need to comment on components of the application that are standard or descriptive about the project. Only focus on those comments that are evaluative, objective, and can assist the applicant in learning how to strengthen their application in future. Additionally, we suggest keeping the due date for the application review process on your calendar and setting a regular goal, perhaps something like reviewing 4 to 5 applications each week to avoid application overload or running out of time. Because our grants management system can reload without warning, we suggest building comments offline before copy and pasting them into Sage. Always lean into the guidelines to determine comments and scores. Be sure to proofread your comments and check them against the rubric. If you have any questions about any aspect of the material covered in this webinar, please reach out to me directly. My email address and phone number is on the screen. We also hope that during this process, you'll provide feedback to us. We want to make sure this process is inclusive, equitable, and easy. Any feedback you can provide during this process will be greatly appreciated. Again, we thank you for serving as a panelist.